I haven't made any decision, nor will I make a decision until the end of the year. And my reason for that, I've never seen a place in the world that basically the next election starts the day after the last election.
That was Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat refusing to rule out a third-party presidential run. After speaking to a bipartisan group in New Hampshire last night, the West Virginia senator told CNN's Caitlin Collins that Americans deserve another option in 2024. CNN's Jeff Zeleny reports.
Senator Joe Manchin openly flirting with the third-party presidential bid in New Hampshire.
We're here to make sure that the American people have an option. And the option is, can you move the political parties off their respective sides? They've gone too far right and too far left.
What he calls a unity ticket, many Democrats fear could be a spoiler by siphoning just enough votes from President Biden to help Donald Trump win back the White House.
I've never been in any race I've ever spoiled. I've been in races to win. And if I get in a race, I'm going to win.
At a town hall meeting at St. Anselm College in New Hampshire, Manchin, a West Virginia Democrat, and John Huntsman, a former Utah Republican governor, made their pitch for No Labels, a bipartisan group trying to move the nation beyond its partisan gridlock. Afterward, they sat down with CNN's Caitlin Collins.
Right now, people are sick and tired of what they're seeing and upset about all they see is turmoil and havoc. And we can do better than this, and the people expect us to do better. And this is a good movement.
They said Americans deserve a third choice if a rematch emerges next year between Biden and Trump.
Should the mainstream political system produce the same results in 24 as it did in 20, in which case 3/4 of the American voters have said no, not again. We want an option.
For more than a decade, the No Labels movement has promoted bipartisanship over extremes. The group, which registers as a nonprofit and declines to disclose its donors, plans to raise $70 million for a candidate in waiting. On Monday night, the group unveiled what it called a common sense policy book, aiming to find middle ground on controversial issues from abortion rights to guns to immigration. It's a centrist agenda that sounds downright utopian in today's deeply divided Washington.
We're trying to make sure the parties understand you can't stay in the extreme left or extreme right.
No Labels has only secured ballot access in Arizona, Alaska, Oregon, Utah, and Colorado, aides say, with the goal of reaching 20 states by the end of the year. Another threat to Biden's re-election bid comes from Cornel West, the former Harvard scholar who is mounting a Green Party presidential bid. He, too, rejects the label of spoiler.
I wish they would spend as much time focusing on the plight of poor and working people as they do focusing on the spoiler. I don't even like that category, since so many of folk who vote third party don't vote at all.
While third party efforts have shown little promise in modern American history, deep displeasure with Trump and Biden have shined a brighter light on the prospects this year. Mindful of an enthusiasm shortfall facing Biden, Democrats are increasingly sounding the alarm, haunted by Ross Perot's independent bid in 1992. And Green Party runs from Ralph Nader in 2000 and Jill Stein in 2016. Manchin, who has yet to say if he intends to seek re-election to the Senate next year or run for higher office, dismissed such concerns.
I'm not here running for president tonight. I'm not. I'm here trying to basically save the nation.
There was significant interest in this idea, of course, here in New Hampshire, where the presidential primary process begins. Many voters say they are taking a look at this organization. Manchin, for his part, said he will make a decision by the end of the year. No Labels will make a decision next year when they see if there is a Trump-Biden rematch in the offing. There is no doubt, though, hanging over all of this, even though Manchin says he's not a spoiler, some Democrats at the White House and supporters of Joe Biden are not so sure. Phil and Abby.
All right, thank you, Jeff Zeleny. Joining us now, our politics reporter for Semafor, Shelby Talcott, a national political reporter for Axios, Alex Thompson. All right, Alex. I loved Dick Durbin, who's the number 2 senator in the Democratic caucus, referred to Joe Manchin as America's biggest political tease, which I think is a fair and accurate assessment to some degree. I am so highly skeptical of this and so highly skeptical of paying attention to it. Am I wrong?
I was talking to somebody in Joe Manchin's camp last night, and that person would say that you are wrong, that this is serious. And in fact, Joe Manchin sort of sees this opposition, all this, what he would see as hand-wringing from Democrats, as actual more encouragement for him to continue doing what he's doing, because they say this is evidence that No Labels is actually tapping into something real, that they are tapping into what the polls show is that America does not want a Biden-Trump rematch. And so I think, he is the biggest political tease, but I also think that with more attention, the more serious he becomes. And, I couldn't help but notice, it was a small thing, but you notice he was styling his hair a little bit differently? He was using a little bit more product. He was parting the hair a little bit.
This is, so full disclosure, this is my favorite thing from last night and this morning, because I have been chuckling about this fact for the better part, and I saw it in your notes this morning. I was like, thank you. I'm not the only crazy person here, because it's true. The hairstyle is different, and we, as reporters, are naturally reading all the tea leaves. What does it mean, Alex Thompson, that there's product in Joe Manchin's hair?
When I asked his person, I was just like, what? And they were like, yeah, it was a little bit different. And Manchin's hair has actually been, weirdly, a bit part of his political personality. He ran ads about how his wife cut his hair in his re-election bid. So I don't know what's going on.
Split screen. These are the important things that we're going to dig into. No, I loved it because it was
You're
funny.
right.
And it's
I
also
hadn't
a
noticed
weird,
that, but it is different.
Yeah.
That's true. And now I'll be reading the tea leaves. I mean, maybe he's trying to, I don't know, is it parted to the left or to the right? I don't know. But Shelby, look, the argument, I mean, and they get asked this pretty much every time they talk about No Labels. Aren't you just going to take away, especially if you don't want Trump to be the president, take away from the Democrat? And there is polling to suggest that people who don't like both parties are more likely, if they're given a choice of the two, to vote for the Democrat. So how concerned are both parties right now? Do you sense more concern on the left or on the right?
I think there's definitely more concern on the left, but I will say that Trump's campaign is keeping an eye on everything. They say that they keep an eye on this, on what Biden is doing, on what Tim Scott is doing, on what every candidate is doing. But at this point, I do think, based on that polling, that Trump's team is viewing this potentially as an opportunity, because a lot of people believe that if Joe Manchin were to run, he would take more votes away from Joe Biden. Now, I will tell you, Joe Manchin does not think that. He believes that he can take votes away from Donald Trump. And he also believes that there is a very narrow way for him to win through some of these red states. And I think his point of view is that that is something that people are not picking up on or don't see. And that's his angle. And he's definitely keeping the door open.
And not just the red states, but these Rust Belt states that he won in 2016, the margin was basically Jill Stein's vote. So there's, evidence for that.
No, and it's what drives the concern. But it's also, Jeff Zeleny made a great point to me the other day that Democrats, at least inside kind of Biden's team, are more concerned about Cornel West as somebody who could actually siphon away. Shelby, I do want to ask, you've had tons of great reporting on the DeSantis campaign and where they stand right now. Obviously, in the midst of a little bit of an overhaul, we have the interview with Jake Tapper tonight, which is certainly a shift in media strategy. But there was something that was in one of your stories from a big donor from DeSantis that I wanted to read off to you, because it was an interesting kind of contrary view, which is it's from Dan Eberhardt, who told you the campaign is smart to adapt. Scott Walker's campaign was too heavy and didn't make changes soon enough. DeSantis' campaign is ahead of the curve and is making the tough choices that will enable them to win in the early primary states and beyond. And I feel like that isn't necessarily considered as a possibility at this point, right? You start this spiral as a candidate and campaign and everybody writes you off, you're dead. That becomes kind of the narrative that sticks. But maybe they learned from Scott Walker's implosion. He was on with Dana yesterday, and the parallels, I think, certainly on the surface are there. Do you think that they have figured out a way to quickly shift and adapt and put themselves back into play here?
I think it's a little bit too soon to tell, but I will say that donors are very split. You have the Dan Eberhardts of the DeSantis campaign who are kind of diehard DeSantis donors who I think will stick with him for a very long time. And then you have a group who are very skeptical and growing more skeptical. And this shakeup placated some, but worried others more. And I do think that there's an opportunity for him to kind of take like the John McCain, the McCain type situation where, he fires his campaign manager or he shakes things up a little bit more aggressively and he ends up doing a lot better.
Yeah. Comeback story, plausible?
Definitely plausible. And, part of this shift in media strategy is part of this. I mean, I don't think you can overstate how much his approach to mainstream media has changed from just 2 months ago. And this Jake Tapper interview this afternoon is just the latest instance of it. And Republicans are all going to be tuning in. Some will be popping some popcorn, too.
And it's really interesting because he is internally, his team has been very split over whether to do mainstream interviews like the Jake Tapper interview. So it's extremely notable that he's doing it this afternoon.
And also, praising Jake. We love Jake, but you wouldn't have heard that from Ron DeSantis just a couple of months ago as they were trying to criticize most of the media that's not named Fox News and folks on the right.
Yeah, everybody in politics is going to be watching Jake